Yep, Minnesota Vikings choked it away. There's really nothing else to say about it. There were a lot of different things in that game that we can talk about, and there's some things that'll even make you feel a little better about the loss. We're going to kind of talk about everything. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the reasons why this team makes you want to drink a lot of Busch Light. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, is producer Dave up here in the top left corner. Listen, we're not going to sugarcoat things. They blew it. They blew it on Sunday night. They blew it for a lot of different reasons, but there are still some reasons to be positive, and we'll get to those later on in the show. Dave, this is just a very frustrating one.
That's an understatement. They set all sorts of records of failure last night.
Mm-hmm.
The 0-4 in the red zone. What are some of the other stats?
I'm going to pull it up because I wrote about it this morning.
Yeah, there's tons of them. They were just fail.
Mm-hmm.
And yet,
listen,
Sam Darnold still has the best completion percentage under pressure for a season, even with last night.
Mm-hmm. It was bad.
It was horrible.
Before we get any further, as you can tell in the top right corner, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, our good friends over there. So this is the one thing that blew my mind, and this is from Sterling G, because I think that's how you pronounce it, because I believe the name is Chinese. The Vikings ran 14 plays in the red zone, Dave. Out of those, one was deemed successful, and we talked about success rate. Success rate meaning that on first down, you need to get to 2nd and 5 or better. On third down, or in second down, you need to get to 3rd and 3 or better. And on 3rd and 4th down, the only way to deem it successful is by a first down or touchdown. Any play is successful via first down or touchdown. So that is how you view it from the offensive side of the football, which is what we're talking about here. One of those plays was successful. Now, let's talk about how historic that is, okay? That is a 7.1 red zone success rate. The average success rate for an NFL offense is around 45%. The good ones are over 50%. The Minnesota Vikings have a very explosive offense, but as far as the consistency element with success rate, it just hasn't been there this year. That is just how the offense has operated. It is what it is. But it's also one of the reasons why they've been so successful, because, hey, first and second down may not have been successful, but if third down goes for 50 yards on a touchdown, that's only a 33% success rate, but you got 7 points. So that's why you want to kind of look at it as a piece to the puzzle and not the overall sample. So this is how historic that is. This was the first time that a team had that low of a success rate in the red zone in the last 5 seasons. Dave, that is 1,328 out of 1,328 games over the last 5 seasons. Not only were the Vikings bad, they were historically bad, because of course they were. And in the moment, and I know it's something that's frustrated people around me. Like, I don't get overly emotional at like a single play. I don't like yell at the TV. I don't get overly mad, because there are some, like, sometimes I do. Like that botched face mask against Sam Darnold in the Rams game, which is the first of 4 that they've missed so far this year. That one, I did yell at my TV, but there are just so many things when it comes to what can go right or wrong on an NFL play, because there's so many moving pieces that I kind of keep my cool and I try to think things pretty logically. And that can be considered a good or a bad thing, depending on who you are. I try to look at things in a much more calm manner, and I try to not let the emotions get to me. So, like the historic bad, I didn't really react much at all, because I was just like, man, I'm trying to think, how is this happening? How is all the things that were going right for the Vikings all of a sudden now just going wrong? And when you kind of look back at the game, it was truly a game of inches, Dave. And I firmly believe the Vikings were this close to winning that football game. But that's also how far they were too. They were miles away from winning that football game at the same time, because they kept getting in their own heads. They kept making those mistakes. And one of those that I'm going to talk about wasn't even a mistake. It just, they weren't able to seal the play. And that was the Andrew Van Ginkel missed pick six, because shortly after that, there was a touchdown. If Van Ginkel takes that to the house, it's either 17-15 or 17-17. All of a sudden, you've got a brand new ball game. Momentum shifts. And just because, like, I know some people in the analytics community don't believe momentum is real. Just because you can't quantify it doesn't mean it's not real. It's like ghosts. Like, just because you don't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. And we're not going to get into a whole conversation if ghosts are real or not, but that construct is what we're talking about here. So you get the momentum like that. Everybody just starts believing, having that confidence, that culture the Minnesota Vikings have cultivated with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. That all starts to ramp up. All of a sudden, the Lions have now committed 3 turnovers, cost themselves points, and given up a pick six. So how does that change things? Well, now let's kind of circle back to earlier in the game, where Justin Jefferson and Sam Darnold were this close on 3 passes into the end zone. 3 of them, none of them were complete. How often does that happen, where you throw the ball to Justin Jefferson within earshot 3 times in the end zone and all of them are missed? It's bonkers, right? And I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up any of your asses. I have way too much respect for you guys to do that. But this is what I mean. The Vikings lost that game. They got beat up on defense. They were great for 2.5 quarters. It was 17-9 going in to that fourth quarter. And then they just couldn't do it anymore. I think the Lions did a fantastic job of adapting and adjusting to some of the blitzes and coverages that Flores was doing. And I just think that their box for the game had just run out of steam. And the Lions deserve all the credit in the world. They had a phenomenal game plan on defense that worked. And I'm curious if other teams will adapt it, especially how the defensive line played. That defensive line was just trying to beat your ass. They were trying to go through you, not around you. And that impacted Sam Darnold's ability to maneuver in the pocket, which has been an elite skill of his all season. I don't think everybody's going to be able to do that. And I think the reason why the Lions did it was they didn't have anybody they could trust to run around these tackles. That's not an insult. They're depleted injury-wise, but with who they had, they put out a game plan, they stuck to it, and it worked. And everybody on that team deserves credit. But when you're the Minnesota Vikings, and you have those little nuances that have worked for you all season, where Sam Darnold throws the ball accurately to Justin Jefferson, and they get all these catches. He finds Jordan Addison in the quick game. Jordan Addison should have had a couple touchdowns yesterday, but Sam Darnold, I want to look at the all-22 clips to kind of see everything a little bit better. But there was the slant, and then it was like the double pick play where Addison was on the inside of a trips formation, and then he's just running a little flat route. A lot of offenses will call it an arrow. If you've ever played football, like in high school, an arrow, tight end just on the line of scrimmage, basically runs at like a 20-degree angle toward the sideline. Just an easy ball. We've seen that route many, many times, like TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt. They had a really simple concept, and it got him wide ass open. Why didn't Darnold throw the football? Why did he hesitate? Why did that end up being incomplete on 4th down? These little things that have been working for them all season long just all of a sudden cratered all in the same game. This, to me, after you give the Lions all the credit in the world because they deserve it, specifically talking about how the Vikings executed, because I don't want to take anything away from the Lions. They earned the win. They deserve to be NFC North champions. But when you try to project forward on how the Vikings played, this was a very fluky game for them, especially when you look at the previous 16 games. The things that they missed in this game were so drastically outside of everything that we've seen from them. They hit. Like, even if you just hit one of those touchdowns to Justin Jefferson, how does the game script change? All of a sudden, hey, you got a touchdown, and now all of a sudden, instead of it being 24-9, it's 24-16. It's a completely different mindset. Hey, we're not down 2 scores with 11 minutes left. We're down 1 score, and we're going to be able to, hey, we just got to sustain 1 drive. We sustain 1 drive, we can either tie the game or get within 2 if we miss a 2-point conversion. Mindset-wise, it's just different. 0-2 on 4th down inside the 10-yard line and goal-to-go situations. Cannot happen. That's not something that the Vikings have done really at all this year. They were only 6 of 10 on 4th down going into the game. Why? There were not a lot of good opportunities for the Vikings to go for it on 4th down this year. Now, there were some where Kevin O'Connell was maybe just a little bit passive when he could have been aggressive, but they were in situations like, I think one of them was against the Green Bay Packers in week 4, Dave, when they could have just really put the foot on the gas and put the nail in the coffin. But at the end of the day, you know what? Punting here, I think they were up 21 or 28 at the time. Probably a smart move because you don't want to go way over the top and all of a sudden cost yourselves. Because shortly thereafter, I think was when Jalen Naylor fumbled that punt because Brandon Powell got hurt. And those little things matter. Every play matters. So when you have that first 4th down, okay, they got us on 1, all right? Is what it is. It sucks. You can't let that happen. But then you force a turnover. It's like, okay, now we're cooking with gas. So what are we going to do with it? How are we going to take advantage? And boom, not only did the turnover happen, but then you do it again. And then after the second one, you get the field goal. So you have 3 4th downs inside the red zone. One of them turns into a field goal. So you have 3 points out of a possible maximum of 24. Well, let's just call it what it is. It would have been 21 points if you got 3 touchdowns. You cost yourself the game by not making those plays. And I do think that I'm seeing a lot in the chat that Kevin O'Connell and his staff got outcoached. I don't think Brian Flores got outcoached until the 4th quarter. And I think once the 4th quarter hit, there were a lot of different factors at play. I do think Kevin O'Connell got outcoached in the sense that I think, and all 22 will tell us this, so I'll be able to give a much clearer answer on Wednesday. I don't think the offensive play calling was an issue until the second half. Because it became really evident in the second half, Dave, that they just couldn't do what they wanted to do. They could not keep chasing explosives. They couldn't just keep trying to find these deep balls up the middle. They didn't complete a single pass over 20 yards in the air, meaning the ball traveled at least 20 yards in the air. Sam Darnold going into the game was number 1 in the National Football League in that category with 32 completions that traveled 20 plus yards in the air. They had a couple opportunities. That 3rd and 18 to Hawkinson, 6 inches away. 3 of the Justin Jefferson misses in the end zone. You drop those, you get them 6 inches closer. At least one of those is caught, maybe all 3. The TJ Hawkinson one on the out route. Kevin O'Connell even said in today's press conference, 9 out of 10 times, that is a completion for a 1st down. These little things are stuff that the Vikings have been doing well all year, and it's an execution thing, which is why right now, without having seen all of the all-22, I'm not going to give O'Connell a ton of the blame. They just missed a lot, uncharacteristically. So if you want to feel better about yourself going in to the game against the Los Angeles Rams, they are not going to be this historically bad. They are not going to miss all of these plays that they have missed. They've just made all freaking year. They just executed so incredibly poorly on Sunday. Some of it was because of the defense of the Lions. And that's why before I went on this diatribe, I wanted to make clear none of this takes away from how good the Lions played. They earned and deserved the win. But if you're the Vikings, you have to hit those plays. An interesting factor, because I know George Blunt in the chat says Sam looks scared. I understand where you're going with this. Scared to me isn't the right word. I think the right word is he was pressing. Have you ever in your life gone up to like been so excited for something and then all of a sudden you kind of screw it up because you had just too much adrenaline going through your system? A lot of NFL quarterbacks and NFL players were just like Sam's pressing, like on social media yesterday night, Sunday night, yesterday night. What am I saying? And pressing is just like, hey, you just want it too much. You're trying too hard. Everybody's had an instance where they've tried too hard. I've done it. Dave's done it. I guarantee you we'll do it again. But it just manifested itself into this thing and it kind of snowballed. He wanted it too much from my own perspective. And that's a frustrating one. He just wanted it too much.
I don't think it's a matter of want. Now, obviously they wanted it. Whether it be Sam, he was jacked up and looked like it was pressing. He was sailing those balls. He had a little bit too much adrenaline, if you want to call it that, running through his system, and he was zinging it off target and high. And when he misses, that's generally where he misses.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't just him. I think KOC was also pressing it, especially in the second half, trying to get everything in, 3 plays type of deal, rather than just methodically, let's look, see what Detroit's giving us, and then try to adapt and take what they are giving us. He was reverting back to, all right, we're now down by 2 touchdowns. I got to go deep. And between the two, it just didn't work. It flat out didn't work. So, hey, hopefully they learned from it. KOC today said, it's hopefully they will learn from it. So we'll see.
Chevy Razy Chase says, puff, puff, pass, Sam. that got a good laugh out of me. Listen, the Vikings were bad. They did not execute well on offense at all. The defense was shockingly really good. They didn't allow a single, like a true explosive. Jahmyr Gibbs got a couple of decent runs, like long runs for touchdowns, but they didn't have, other than that, they didn't have a long run until the fourth quarter. They didn't have a long pass all game. I think their longest pass was like 15, 16 yards. They held them in check.
Yeah, but they prevented great on third downs.
No,
for the most part.
But no, they weren't. But they did a really good job of trying to maintain it. Just so one of the interesting things that a friend of mine, Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings, I recommend you check out a show when you're done here. He talked about how, like with Brian Flores, 5-man pressures isn't a blitz. That's just the way they live. That's their base. And I thought that was a really interesting way to phrase it, because he's right. 5-man pressure is just their norm. That's how they operate. And I thought that was a really good thing to say and kind of way to phrase it, Dave, because when you're having that conversation about the Vikings defense and when you're doing X, Y, and Z, it's important to know that, like, hey, a blitz is going to be like sending 6, 7, or 8, which, let's be honest, the Vikings do those things, but sending 5, like it's a traditional blitz for a lot of people, but it's not for the Vikings. And I never really thought of it, how to phrase it like that, but he's right. And I think you could make an argument, hey, maybe you just shouldn't send 5 every time against Jared Goff. They did play Goff really well for the most part, but the problem is they know the rules of these blitzes and they know the holes. So when they see a blitz, they are getting in the hole, and then just peppering the ball. 5-6 yard gains. And to a point, the Vikings kind of want that. Now, they don't want to give up any yards. Nobody does. But they would rather give up these 5-6 yard gains than all of a sudden give up chunks of 20 and 30, which is kind of what in the Lions' offense, just like, all right, you're going to give it to us, we'll take it. And then we'll just keep driving down the field, and then we'll just make enough plays, and we'll get a score. So if these teams meet for a third time, are they going to adapt and adjust? Because some of those blitzes did not get home enough for how they were called. The 4th down blitz where you had Josh Metellus on the edge was this close. But Dave, that is, you can only talk close in horseshoes and hand grenades. It's either a hit or a miss.
And
there is
weapons.
Yeah, that's true. There is no, I almost got there. Well, it doesn't matter. You gave up the first down. So the little things have made such a big difference in how this game turned out. The Vikings should have been way better than they were, but they also didn't play terribly. They were just off. This wasn't a crater game. This was those little variances just all went against the Vikings. And like statistically speaking, that won't happen again. It won't. And I think that is one way to kind of feel better about where this team is at in like the Rams game, because it's not going to happen again. They're going to have a full week to prepare for both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, where they didn't know either one was going to play against them. They thought that Cooper Kupp was going to play. They did not know Puka was going to play. So, and you've already played them once. You understand what happened, what went wrong. So how are you going to adapt and adjust? And you know what? This might be the wake-up call that they need to be able to put this thing over the top. I'm not going to tell you that I believe they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to hope. I'm going to pray. I'm going to believe. But the season isn't over until you lose a football game. Another one. Anything can happen. And I think the high amount of variance that went against the Vikings on Sunday is reason to be optimistic going into Monday.
Could be. And you talk about working this week. I think the sports psychologists they have on staff will be busy at it as well. And the team, maybe people on the squad were into their own hype for whatever reason. And now they got punched in the face and they'll settle back down and do what it takes. They got to go 1-0, period. Because if they go 0, they're 0 and done.
Yeah. They are 0 and done. And I do think that's interesting. A couple of questions here, and then we're going to kind of move on. I get cause and effect. They've been asking some really good questions lately. Forno is trying to figure out why Sam sat in the pocket too long and why he wasn't attempting more scrambling runs to keep the defense guessing. Sam's feet didn't look set, so what's next? So the offensive line, because we're going to wrap this up into another question, comment from Alex Lucas saying that Blake Brandel needs to go. And I think that idea, it kind of ties all together. So the way that the Lions pressured the Vikings was to keep Sam Darnold in a collapsed pocket. There wasn't anywhere to go. If they were playing contain, they were just trying to push the Vikings back into Darnold to prevent him from maneuvering around, to prevent him from escaping, sliding in the pocket, and then finding lanes, then open routes downfield. They did a great job of it. Fantastic job. And because of that, he wasn't really able to scramble. So all of a sudden now you've got like Darnold not really being able to play within his comfortability. And it's just like, dang, that stinks. But it is what it is. Like, this is how the Vikings have chosen that they want to live. And this is what happens when you get pulverized. And then the Brandel thing. This is going to be an interesting offseason for the offensive line, Dave. I came into the season praising the idea of giving Blake Brandel a try. I thought a lot of his weaknesses would be mitigated by the move to the inside. And early on, I was right. But I did some research, and obviously I've watched all the film from the year. Brando's really struggled once Cam Robinson came in. And I think one of the reasons why Brando was so successful is because he had Christian Darrison next to him, and that gravity matters. You guys know I don't love the PFF data for as far as like offensive line grades and stuff, but 6 charted pressures when Christian Darrison played every game. Then he had 4 pressures against the Rams. Over the last 10 games, 31, including a whopping 8 against the Lions last night.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Vikings have $72 million in dead cap, so they knew that they had to take risks at some spots. Bobby Bichet in the chat, I believe I said your name right. I apologize if I didn't. So the Vikings refused to address the interior line. I don't think it's a refusal at this point. They didn't have the means to do it because they fixed other positions. And I think the way that they handled those other positions, it's hard to argue against it. Like, they prioritized getting Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, and Andrew Van Ginkel. Are we going to give up one of those guys to get a slight upgrade at guard? I think that's where we're having that conversation. So they chose to prioritize those other spots and take the chance at Ed Ingram taking a leap in year 3. That Blake Brandel could be a starter. And if you have good guard play, Garrett Bradbury's fine. He's not great, but he's making $5.25 million on average. He's fine. He doesn't have to be elite. And quite frankly, he's very rarely the problem on this offensive line. It's either left or right guard. And now, because Cam Robinson isn't Christian Darrisaw, it's at left tackle. So the Christian Darrisaw effect, I think, is real. And if Darrisaw is healthy next year, maybe Brandel is completely fine. But it's also his first year as a starter. Now, should he be starting? We can have that conversation too. But I do think that all of these factors kind of meld together into the point where the Lions just had the perfect game plan against the Vikings, and they didn't adjust well enough. They just didn't. And it was that aspect where I really do think Kevin O'Connell got out-coached. I think he was unwilling to adapt enough with quick game stuff that could have really helped. He did incorporate some screens in the second and third quarters, but then when it's like 4th and 10, you're running like a post corner when Sam Darnold's getting pressured quickly. You can't be doing that stuff. You have to call different route concepts. You have to call stuff like wide choice and let Hawkins to catch it on a little slant route at 7 yards and trust that he's going to take it 3 more upfield. You have to be better than that. And O'Connell wasn't. And that's why I think this is a game of reflection, Dave. This team needs to sit back, reflect on what happened and how they can be better. And I think they will. It's just a bitter, bitter pill to swallow.
Yep. Hopefully they learn from it.
Yeah.
Change up, because what the defense on the Lions did will be copied.
Mm-hmm.
By the Rams.
It will be.
And the Lions again, and the Eagles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say not everybody can do the exact style of defense that the Lions did. Some guys can. So we'll see. But one thing that I don't think we talked about, even though the cornerbacks for the Lions weren't exactly quote unquote good, Kirby Joseph at safety has 9 interceptions. Brian Branch made the Pro Bowl, and Joseph was a second alternate. Like, this is a team that had good players. And I think just the total number of injuries had us forgetting that they had good players. So just something to be mindful of. That's all. All right. But before we keep going, Dave, let's talk about our friends at Underdog Underdog Fantasy. We just love underdogs here at Vikings First and SKOL. One of the big things with Underdog Fantasy is we absolutely love the idea of having every game mean a little bit more. How cool is that music, right? Every game means just a little bit more with Underdog because you can have more fun. You can pick whether your favorite players will have higher or lower stat total, and it gives you a chance to win big up to 1,000 times your money. All you do is pick between 2 and 8 players, build a lineup, and then you get odds on that. You can either do a standard play which is all or nothing, or a flex play, where if one of your 6 picks doesn't work, you'll still make out a little bit of something. All right. I personally, I like Quentin Johnston this upcoming Saturday afternoon, over 3.5 receptions. Over the last couple of games, he did a great job connecting with Justin Herbert, who went from 20th in the NFL in EPA, dropped back to 12th in just 3 weeks. An incredible climb. And Quentin Johnston at one point, I don't know what he finished with, but he had 13 catches for like 186 yards yesterday, Dave. Just an impressive performance from the former first-round pick. I'm a big Quentin Johnston guy, and I still believe he can be really good. But if in order to do it, make sure you visit underdogfantasy.com. Find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register my promo code, Forno, Forno. It's going to be free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash.
Absolutely. Remember, you must be 18, 19 in Alabama, and what is that, Nebraska, 19 in Colorado, 21 plus in Arizona and Maine or Massachusetts, and all present in the state where you play. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP 53342. New York, call 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE NY.
Thank you, Dave. Now let's kind of spin things forward. I do want to mention a couple of things before we really kind of start having conversations about this Rams game. One of the things that's really interesting to me is the NFL draft. And we're going to have more NFL draft-centric episodes as things come around. But the first rendition of the mock draft roundup, the most comprehensive mock draft database in all of Vikings media, has begun. This year it is hosted AtoZSports.com. And one of the big things I do with this mock draft roundup is I take a look at every single industry mock draft that I deem, for lack of a better term, credible. Like, there are some sites I do use, some sites I choose not to use. Like, I use the big ones like CBS Sports, NBC Sports, and what I do is I will keep track of how players are being taken by the Vikings, who's going to them, and kind of see trend lines. So one of the interesting things I found last year, Dave, when kind of taking a look, and if you guys want, I'll actually I'll send Dave the link for the spreadsheet, and then he can post it in the chat. One of the interesting things here is, like, you can kind of see all the data I have through 2022. 2022, I didn't do the full draft because I was not full-time in the industry yet. So I got like a few weeks. But the last 2 years is full-time. I've been doing it every single week from January 1st on. Last year, JJ McCarthy was not a selection in 3 of the first 4 weeks. And the only week he was a selection for the Vikings, he was picked once. 838 total mock drafts, 273 times JJ McCarthy was selected, including a whopping 61 in the final rendition of the mock draft roundup. So you can kind of take a look at all the data, and I updated every single week on Monday. And this first week, we had 15 mock drafts. Last year, there were 16. So there is a little bit of variance there. Last year, it was 8 days for the first roundup because the first was on a Monday. This year, it's just 5. So what's interesting is the number one player selected was a running back, Dave. North Carolina's Omarion Hampton. There were a total. I wonder
if that has anything to do with Gibbs.
No, I think it's just because Omarion Hampton is somebody, one, I love his game. 2, I just think he's that good. And this running back class is bonkers, and the rest of the class is kind of weak on an overall scale. But there were 3 total.
When Gibbs was taken by Detroit, everybody laughed because running backs didn't matter. Well,
I think I was one of them. I think I was one of them that kind of like laughed at the pick a little bit. But we were wrong. Koisito Fomensa, by all accounts, loved Gibbs in that draft. And this is something that shouldn't be news to any of you. We've talked about on this program before. Doogie tweeted about it earlier today that they loved him. Like, of course they did. He's great. And I think running backs to a point do matter. If you have a good one, they you should just take him. Like Saquon Barkley was a 2nd overall pick. Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey were selected 8th overall. Jahmyr Gibbs at 12th. Josh Jacobs at 24th. If the talent's there, just take him. Like, there's something about positional value, but also the running game is more important now than it has been in years. So it's important to have good backs. But other than that, you have just 3 picks at running back, 5 picks at defensive tackle, 1 pick at offensive tackle, and then 6 at cornerback. One of those corners being Jim Thorpe Award winner Jahdae Barron. He is kind of like a Josh Metellus, but he can also play outside corner. He's a Swiss Army knife. I don't know how he would be used by some of the, like how Flores would want to use him, but there's a lot of talent there. And I think it's really interesting to kind of see how things grow and develop. Because so far, we have 9 players in the first week. That's going to grow because this is a very weird draft class, not a ton of talent.
And we'll be picking 32nd anyway, so don't have to worry about that.
That's the spirit, Dave. That is the spirit.
And speaking of Flores, it's been reported he's been asked by 2 teams to interview. Mm-hmm. The New York Jets and the Chicago Bears. If he wants any advice from me, stay away from the Jets. It's a career ender.
Yeah.
Bears aren't much better, but hey.
The Jets are bringing in 3 Minnesota Vikings to interview. You're bringing Flores to interview for head coach. You're bringing Josh McCown to interview as head coach, which I find interesting. I think that's a de facto offensive coordinator interview that they're framing as a head coach interview. And then there is Ryan Grigson, the senior VP of player personnel, who's interviewing for the GM job. McCown could go with Brian Flores to be his offensive coordinator if he goes somewhere. That's something to be mindful of. They have Grant Udinsky, who could step up into that quarterback's coach role. He's already an assistant. He's kind of viewed as a wonder kid. Like Ben Gessling did a feature on him. Like that dude he's like 29 years old. He's just stupid smart, and he's incredibly driven and motivated. So I think that's something to be mindful of and keep an eye on. I still have no idea if Brian Flores is going to get a job, but the Jets interviewing him is a positive step forward as far as his legal battle with the National Football League. Something to be aware of, something to keep in mind, and I think it's a good thing that he's getting interviews. Plus, the Vikings will get a 3rd-round compensatory selection in the year he gets the job, and the next year if he leaves because of the Rooney Rule. So that is something to be mindful of. But the Grigson thing, he's gotten a lot of rave reviews from inside the building, but does he deserve another chance? That's up to interpretation. Things went really poorly. They went so poorly with the Indianapolis Colts that Andrew Luck quit football. Like, you made a generational player quit football because you couldn't fix the offensive line. It was bad. It was very bad. But second chances are usually deserved, so we'll see if he ends up getting one. And McCown, there were rumors he was going to get the Texans' job in 2020. So we'll find out what ends up happening there, but it's very interesting.
Now, Chris asked, does Flores leave if KOC gets poached
Okay, let's talk about that. This is where I think, how do I say this without being insulting? Because I don't mean it as an insult. This is where, put on your media literacy hats. What did Jay Glazer say? And really read into what Jay Glazer said. Teams will be calling the Vikings about a potential trade for Kevin O'Connell. Of course they will. O'Connell's going to the last year of his deal. Everybody would want Kevin O'Connell as their head coach. What does the report not say? Doesn't say anything about Kevin O'Connell wanting it or being interested. Doesn't say anything about the Vikings wanting it or being interested. It just says other teams will call. That's the report.
But what price would be big enough for the Wolves?
I don't think there is a price.
Because you can do maximum 3 first rounds.
Well, no, you could trade as many first-round picks as you want. They just have to be within the next 3 drafts.
Okay.
So that's the caveat.
First rounders.
Yep.
I mean, you can, whoever wanted to trade could trade 3 years of draft picks.
Yeah.
They commit suicide doing that, but okay. But that's technically what they could do for a max price.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the Wolves would be willing to trade. And here's why it doesn't matter much. The big thing with the Wolf organization, how they run their business, they don't really discuss extensions until you're on the final year of your deal. They did that with Zimmer and Spielman, and now they're doing it here. They're going to have those discussions this offseason, and they want to keep both of these guys. So expect those deals to get done pretty quick. They want them to stay. They've earned the right to stay. And to me, it's a nothing burger. And that's when you hear this kind of stuff. Teams will call. Of course, teams will call. They called about Jefferson. They're going to call about McCarthy. That doesn't mean the Vikings are interested or they'd even listen to those conversations, or they just say no and hang up the phone. That's where, when this kind of stuff comes out, think to yourself, okay, what is the report actually saying and what are they not saying? Not once did they say the Vikings would be interested. And I think that is a really important factor here. KOC just flat out said, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm very happy here. Just shut it down completely. I'll pull up the exact quote because I wrote about it. A2Zsports.com. That's where you can find all my writing stuff. Sorry, I don't know why I'm singing completely out of tune and awful, but I am. All right, here is the quote from Kevin O'Connell. I shortened it a little bit because Kevin O'Connell in the press conferences does this thing where he starts talking about something and then completely gets off topic and then does not get back to his original point. So the first part of the quote is really what you need. Quote, when Kevin Seifert asked about it. Yeah, I'm not really interested in kind of, I guess I should say, addressing the rumors or speculation. What I can tell you is I love this team. I love everything about this organization, and this is where I want to be. This is where I want to keep coaching and leading. He doesn't even want to address the rumors because they're preposterous. They are dumb. They are bad. And the one weird thing about kind of national media, and you have people like Jay Glazer, you have people like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter. These people are not lying to you. And that's the difficult part about this whole conversation, because what they're telling you is the truth. They are telling you that they have had conversations with teams who will make these phone calls. They're not telling you that these trades will go anywhere. They're not telling you that X, Y, or Z is going to happen. What they are telling you is, oh, teams are interested. Of course they are. And this is where we need to be better about media literacy, because, Dave, everybody in this chat knows that Kevin O'Connell's not getting traded. But what these insiders have to do, they have to find news. They have to talk about news. They have to have these conversations. And it's an important part of their business to be able to drum up speculation, to be able to talk about like what could happen in the news, what could happen in these situations. That's their job. That doesn't mean they're lying to you. It means they talked to at least one general manager who said, I would absolutely call about a Kevin O'Connell trade. Absolutely. because he's a guy we're trading for. That's all they need for a report. That's it. That's not being maybe it's being a little disingenuous in how they frame it, but they're not lying to you. They're telling you the truth. Somebody told them in the league that has in the position to do so that they would make a trade for Kevin O'Connell and they would call about it. So just remember that when these reports come out, because guess what? They're going to come out a lot with Sam Darnold. They're going to come out a lot with JJ McCarthy. They've already started. I think that the people who listen to this show, especially just by gauging how things are in this chat, are an incredibly smart group of people. Use your intelligence and just read through the lines. That's all it is.
Now, I find it interesting that with a lot of these, you got to follow where the motivation came from.
That's a great point, because guess what? Some of this might have come directly from Kevin O'Connell's camp.
Yep. His agent raising the price, letting the Wilfs know, hey, he's getting more expensive by the day.
Yep.
Well, we'll see. But that's also how you're going to interpret the media on this stuff, is who's pushing the narrative.
You'll notice the same people caping for the same people. It's because they have a contact. There's a reason why guys like Tom Pelissero and Jeremy Fowler get almost all the Minnesota scoops. Why? They're Minnesotans. Tom Pelissero lives still in Minnesota. I don't believe Jeremy Fowler does anymore, but he used to be a beat writer for the Pioneer Press. That's how he came up in this business. So I think those things all matter. What, Dave?
Same with Seifert, Kevin Seifert.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's a Star Tribune guy, but I mean, he's not national.
Seifert's
he just works
ESPN.
for a national platform.
Oh.
Well, yeah, but he is a local beat writer that just happens to work for a national platform.
Yeah, but he does the
Tom
whole
Pelissero and
division.
Jeremy Fowler are national reporters now.
Okay.
So I guess I'm grouping them in different buckets, even though Fowler and Seifert technically work for the same organization. So it makes it interesting. And that dichotomy is fascinating. So just remember, just whenever you see these reports, who wants it out there? Why do they want it out there? And what does it actually mean? Yeah, and if you're not sure, jump in my messages. Ask me. I'll be there. We'll talk it out. Dave, regular season is done. The Vikings are going to face the Los Angeles Rams this upcoming Monday night.
14-3, which is a remarkable season.
They should be very proud of it. I'll address this one time only. The Vikings deserve to play on the road as a wild card because they didn't win their division. I think there should be something as far as division winners. They should get something. And I think a home playoff game is a good thing. I will advocate for down the line that they should reseed after the first round. They should, whoever has the best records remaining, that's your seeding. So if the Vikings were to win their wild card game, they should then become the 2 seed. Because I think that is important. I think it's important to reward teams for winning their division, but then you should reseed and the best records get those games. I don't think the Vikings should be like, oh, they should just be the 2 seed because they won 14 games. They didn't win their division. They didn't deserve it. And I'm like, I would say the same thing if the Packers were in that position. I would say the same thing if the Vikings like won their division at 8-9. If you win your division, you deserve to host a playoff game. That's a reward. And then just reseed after the first round. Because they already kind of do that anyways, but just completely do it. But yeah, that is our show here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining. One thing that I will say is Dave and I will have to talk. We may try to do an extra episode of the Real Forno show this week or something like that, because Monday's show will once again be a pregame show. And if there's an opportunity for us to do that, then we will. Also, programming note, don't forget, 2 old bloggers will not be on Saturdays for much longer. Pay attention to when that change happens, because you don't want to show up on a Saturday and be like, what's going on? Because they moved to Sunday. That, I believe that change happens after the Super Bowl, but Dave and Darren will communicate with you on the specifics. Who knows? Maybe we can get Darren to show up on a Saturday and a Sunday just to mess with everybody. That would be wonderful content. Sal should be here tomorrow night, Thursday, with Scolders and Spice. I believe she was having Dustin Baker on to talk about the in-game experience with the Detroit Lions, and because he drove out with some people, and Sal mentioned on her post-game show last night that she was glad that she didn't spend like 12 hours in a car going out to that game. So we'll get to hear all about that, and I'm sure we'll get some analysis from them as well. And then we'll be back on Wednesday night having a conversation with a more in-depth angle, talking about the Vikings versus the Rams. Should be a really good game. They played earlier this year. And the Vikings, Dave, 1.5 point favorites, depending on the sports book. I've seen it as high as 2.5. It opened at 0.5 points, and it spiked. Look, this Vikings team isn't destitute. People still believe in them, and they should. I still believe in them.
Yeah, they're thinking yesterday was a fluke.
And we kind of talked about it. There were a lot of fluky elements, and then there were some that weren't.
And
but
getting punched in the face, that they'll come out focused. And every time I've heard, every time Sam had a bad game, he bounced back with a great one. So we may get that great one this week. We're going to need it. We're going to need 3 more.
Yeah, and I think we can get it. I really do. I do. Freddie asked what my prediction is. Freddie, I don't have one yet. I need some time to study, but we'll get it. We'll get there. Thank you guys so much for joining. We're going to be back on Wednesday night. We're going to be here live on Tuesday night with Sal, and I believe Thursday as well. And you may get a bonus episode from me just because, hey, we don't have a Monday night episode other than the pregame show. So thank you guys so much for joining. 5 stars, like, subscribe, ring the bell for those notifications. That is going to be an easy way for you to not forget that Dave and Darren moved the show from Saturday to Sunday for their summer binge. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!